All right, so welcome to another lunchtime chat, RELC lunchtime chat to be exact. Today, our special guest is Danita Mason-Hogans. And the topic, the title of today's presentation/conversation is Legacy Centered, Framing the Black American Experience Across Generations in North Carolina. I had the pleasure and privilege of meeting Miss Danita Mason-Hogans actually through Dr. Parker at one of his information plus hour chats, which I was grateful to be a part of myself as a presenter. But I think it's a nice compliment to what we do here. It is just about getting community involved and getting community informed. I think that's just in our best interest, and I'm glad to see so many people uh, quenching that thirst for some knowledge and for understanding the sum total of us instead of just the bits and pieces. So one of the things that I come across in some of the research I do and some of the things I pay attention to in terms of the Black American experience are attached to this notion of a lack of history, a lack of understood past, things of that nature. And it's always my goal to disrupt that, even if it is not as clear and succinct as others may be able to trace their past. It is a past that is significant and specific. Um, you can pay homage to anything outside of America, but when you can go back here and see the energies that are exhausted to survive, to thrive, to exist, to be able to pass on whatever you can to your descendants. It's a good thing to have this much evidence and proof that people understood what was at stake, understood what they were fighting for, and we get to hear a little bit about that and with the level of specificity that is not often had, but does not disrupt the actual presence of us in this grand land of ours. So Miss Hogans did a presentation that I was really impressed with. I'm a big fan of her work. She's not just a quasi historian; she's an activist. She's an oral historian, which I think is one of the coolest things you can be. That's some great primary source material. And if I may, I know you went and interviewed Andrew Young earlier this year, and I talked to you when you were on your way there, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome stuff, man. To sit down with some of these folks, these icons, and get that first hand recounting of events that they were actually there for. So anyway, I'm glad that she was able to make time for us. I'm looking forward to what she's going to talk about today, and I'm glad that you guys could join. Without further ado, Miss Danita Mason-Hogans, take us away.
Well, thank you so much for that nice, kind introduction. I want you to know that I am so tremendously honored and proud to join you here for lunch. And bonus, got the Freddie Parker in the house too. And I have not, I've not seen Dr. Parker in a while, but Felton Foushee continues the tradition of doing public history work, which is something I deeply, deeply believe in. And it's extra nice because I am such a big admirer of the things that he does and his zeal to gather people together to tell the truth. It means a lot to come here today. And it also means a lot because my family and the Foushee family go way back. And as many generations as I can count, the Mason family and the Foushee family have been connected and have worked with each other. So this little note of serendipity to be connected through Dr. Parker is something that I really welcome. And I usually begin talking about my ancestors. Today, I would like to do something a little different on two fronts. First, I'd like to make this a bit more conversational and a little less formal. I want to introduce you to my people, give you some context, but I would love to hear from you and also to engage in conversation. So if we can do that, that'd be wonderful. And today, I want to start with a likely ancestor of yours, Felton Foushee. Her name is Miss Vivian Foushee. Miss Vivian Foushee passed away about a week and a half ago. And one of the public memory projects that I worked on was a collection of histories and understandings of women in Chapel Hill, Black women in Chapel Hill who participated in the civil rights movement. I always contend that we can't understand the movement of the 60s without going into the 50s. And then that has a conversation of the 40s. But specifically for Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and in particular for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill when it comes to hospitals, I really call people in Miss Vivian Foushee's era the Black vanguard. Miss Foushee was born in 1933. And she was one of the first participants in the School of Social Work. She was very active in the 50s and just led a remarkable life. Miss Vivian Foushee was an educator. She was a servant. She was an activist. She applied for admittance into North Carolina, a UNC Chapel Hill in the early 50s and was not accepted because of their discrimination policy, but she continued to apply. And as a consequence, she eventually graduated. And what she did, and she did go to undergrad at North Carolina Central, so let me say that. But when she graduated, she could have taken that, for a woman to, and in particular, Black woman, to receive a degree at that age, there were a lot of things that were open to her at that time. And what she decided to do was to become an advocate. So Miss Vivian Foushee always advocated for youth, for elders, and worked in the healthcare industry. When she faced discrimination in some of the social work places that she was in, Miss Foushee opened up her own private social work. So I just wanted to acknowledge her. Her family reached out to me and asked that I provide them with some information that I had collected when I did oral histories with Miss Foushee. And it was a gift. When somebody passes away, I don't know about people on this call, but for me, it is something that is heart-wrenching because you care about people and you want to make it better, but there's usually nothing you can do. So I just want to say in this platform that the gift that I could share with the Foushee family was this oral history so that they could hear her beautiful voice, they could see her face, and they could hear her talk about the meaning of her life. Now, Ms. McMillan, I see your hand is raised and I don't want to ignore it. Oh, okay. All right. So
wait a minute, I couldn't get to mute. I couldn't get to unmute. I do have a question
okay.
Because I know that there are different pronunciations for the names, and I'm just a wordsmith, and you have dealt with this family. Do they pronounce theirs Foushee? Because Felton, to my understanding, he happens to be my cousin. They pronounce theirs Foushee. So just as I look this up, is that something that they told you? So I can just, for my own perspective.
Well, yes, that the people in Chapel Hill say Foushee, and I'm giggling, and Dr. Parker can please correct me, but there was a movement actually in the late 60s to kind of reclaim people's names or pronunciations, and I'm smiling because I am a Burnett in Chatham County, but prior to the 60s, we were Burnetts. So we have Farahs in Chapel Hill who now are Farahs. So we have Foushee and we have Foushees. So that that type of linguistic change, is something that I really enjoy about us. And
I'll say it as well, just for clear. It's people say it all different types of ways. I just try to roll with it for the most part, but I say it the way I say it. But I know for a fact that Foushee or almost fishy is a way that I've heard it also. So I know it's not an understood thing, but you're right. People just do what they like. So I'm okay with it. I know it's spelled the same. I do know that.
Well, I honor all of it. So anyway, I just wanted to begin a little bit to kind of contextualize the work that I do and the reason behind it. by sharing a little, very small piece of a video with Miss Vivian when she was talking in our oral history about what drives her. Let me see. Y'all have to bear with me. I'm trying to operate two things at the same time. Okay. So this is her oral history, and I'll put up her photo too.
Folk in Chapel Hill had been lulled to sleep. I remember thinking that when I got out of high school. It was very disconcerting. I was worried about it, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I was comparing Chapel Hill Black folk to Chatham County Black folk, who seemed to me to be up and about something. And I just thought, Chapel Hill, we just think we got it made, not noticing what's going on, probably don't even know what's going on. And so therefore, that was my attitude.
Do you think, Ms. Foushee, that had anything to do with our relationship to the university and
Yes.
the hospital?
Yes, I do.
In what way?
I think, well, there were some really good white folk at the university who would reach out to Black folk. And we're so, I don't know whether it's true now, but we used to be so easily persuaded that what they wanted for us was good. Didn't do much investigating that I know of. Didn't do a lot of being curious about where you're coming from, what makes you think this would work for us. It was just if they said it, must be okay. And that was part of my disillusionment with us, me included, the Black community, as opposed to Chatham County, because I thought Chatham County Black folk had it going on. They were always stirring something up, and after something. So I think I was right about that we got lulled to sleep. And you can see that now, the lulling to sleep with the gentrification.
So you can imagine that we had such a good time together. Following that Mason-Foushee tradition, Miss Vivian Foushee also worked with my cousin Gloria Mason-Williams, and they would tear up Chapel Hill in the 50s. They would advocate, they would go to the school system, they tear it down. And so women like these, like Miss Foushee, are not often women that we hear about, but they have made such a significant difference in our town. And I usually talk about the impetus of looking at history through a local lens and how history has impacted us locally. And I just could not think of a better way to start than by saying thank you, Brother Felton, for inviting me here. And your ancestor, Miss Foushee, was just something else. So this is the house that my family was enslaved in. It still is here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Well, actually now it's in Chatham County. We know historically that Orange County used to extend all the way to the Virginia line. And so it used to be situated in Orange County. At one time it was in Durham County, and now it's in Chatham County. The plantation home was so large that it connected it bordered Durham, Chapel Hill, and Orange County. And some of the work that I'm doing is collecting these stories so that perhaps we can get our house back. Right now, it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. When they were trying to collect houses and land to erect Jordan Lake. So it's a whole thing, but this is the house that my people descend from. So I'm going to go into a little bit of family history, and then I just want to have a little discussion about it. So this is where we are at the house. I always connect history with power. And the reason that I connect history with power is because this photo was probably taken about 1.5 years or 2 years ago. And I only found out about this house as I was advocating for another house that once belonged to enslaved people, what I thought was the last enslaved house in Carborough, North Carolina, and was contacted by the current resident of this house, who in fact told me that this Mason house was still standing. And I did not know that. So I always ascribe power to the ability to understand and interpret history, because we had a whole group of descendants that was in Chapel Hill, and we didn't even know about the house. And right now it is owned by, well, excuse me, it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers, but it is leased by the North Carolina Preservation Society. So before I introduce you to my ancestor, Sally Mason, I want to talk with you a little bit about the process that really all of the work is grounded in and why it's centered there. So the concept for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill started in 1776. So I always contend that the relationship between Black people in Chapel Hill mirrors the relationship with Black people in America. And this is exactly the place that we need to begin in my family, because my family has always been connected to the University of North Carolina. And my family is not different from a lot of local generational Chapel Hill families, like the Foushées, like also the Parkers. Dr. Parker is a generation Orange County person. So it's really important for me that we understand our connection to the university. So when they were talking about building the nation's first public university, there was a big disagreement between the eastern side of the state and the western side of the state. The western side of the state was considerably less affluent than the eastern side of the state. And what they decided to do was to have a public university. Up until that time, public university, in order to go to a college, you had to have like private tutoring, you had to go to England sometime. And the aristocracy in the eastern side of the state wanted a convenient way for their children to receive higher education. But the people on the western side of the state, the white farmers, felt oppressed by this notion because they were largely working at a very huge disadvantage, because a lot of them did not own enslaved people, although they rented enslaved people. The landowners on the eastern side of the state were wealthy enslavers. So the people on the western side of the state would not vote for the usual process, which is for the General Assembly to just give the land or the money or whatever they needed, give the resources to begin a public university. So instead of that, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill was started with escheated labor. Now, an escheat is when someone dies without heirs, their property goes back to the state. The challenge for us Black people in Chapel Hill is that we were property. So not only was the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill built on stolen native lands with Black labor, it was also sustained by people were pig farmers, and we grew corn, and the bounty of our crops went to feed the people at the university. And so not only were we the physical sustainers, the physical builders, we were the fiscal foundation of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And everybody I know from Orange County on is a product in some way of that system. So this is Sally Mason. And what you are not able to see on there right now is that the wording on the bottom of the tombstone, which was considered to be a quite an honor. I know there are people today who can't afford to get a high tombstone like that. So in the year that she passed away in 1783, it was quite unusual for a Black person to have that type of land tombstone that was dedicated to them. So Sally Mason was owned by Thomas A. Mason, and she spent her life not only in dedicated service to him, but as he had children, she would be passed away along to their households. So at the bottom of the inscription, it says, "Our Black Mammy," which was supposed to be something that was a compliment to her and her service. And as a reward, she would die and go to heaven and serve white people in heaven. Now, of course, I visited this tombstone, and you can see fieldstones outside and indented soil that indicated that she was buried away from her children. So forgive the little hand. I'm trying to do better with screenshot. But this is Richard Nunn, who obviously was a native man. I don't know if he was Occaneechi. I don't know what tribe he was a part of. But Richard Nunn lived in 1854. This is about when this photo was around. And he was the father of Connie Nunn, who married a Mason. So Connie Nunn Mason is actually somebody that I remember. If you look at the bottom of the photo, you see that she died in 1971 at age 87. And I remember her because she had real long hair, and she would let us play with her hair, and we called her Ma Connie. So it's really important for me to share this memory with you because we touch our memories. We can touch our history. So this is Connie Nunn. She was married to my great-grandfather, William Mason. And William Mason raised his family in the same area, and he was the father to my grandfather. And I wanted to show you, revisit the photo. So if you look at the photo in the back and you look at William Mason in front of this photo, it's the same house. So this is the family that had been, this is the house that had been in a family for, all of these generations. This is my great-grandmother, Emma, who was enslaved at UNC. And her daughter, Nellie Croker, became a part of the laundry program at UNC once UNC developed its water system, its electric system. And prior to that, it was normative for Black women to be launderers of people at the university. And they continued that tradition even up until like the 70s. So that is my great-grandmother, Emma, and Mama Nellie, which was so that's my great-great-grandmother. And Mama Nellie was the sister of my grandfather, Ernest. So this is my great-grandfather, Ernest, and his wife, Grandma Nettie, who was pregnant with my grandmother, Emma, during that time. This is just, a photo of Granddaddy Ernest on the far left of your screen. Next to him is Grandmother Nettie. And my grandmother Emma has the stars beside her head. This is my grandfather David. Granddaddy David was born in the 20s, and he was a World War II veteran. So historically, this is about the time where there was New Deal legislation and New Deal monies. You can see that Granddaddy worked in masonry. As a matter of fact, those of you who attend NCCU, if you go to Moore Gym, in the corner, there's a crack. That was my granddaddy's work. He put a crack in the gym. But this is when policy dictated that there were skilled versus unskilled laborers. And for all of the time that these men had built all of the energy, these beautiful workmanship projects are still here today. This is when that money came, and all of a sudden they were unskilled laborers, which meant that they were paid half of what the skilled laborers were if they were lucky. This is my Uncle Matthew Mason and my grandfather who worked for the university. This is them at a fraternity house when they were young men. And if you can see on your screen, they both retired. My grandfather worked for 53 years at the Carolina Inn, which we also know was fashioned after a plantation home. So this history goes forward and touches us. This is the Mason Motel. And the Mason Motel is something that came because we were proximate to power. We were proximate to the wealthy Mason family. Thomas A. Mason, I should also mention, was one of the progenitors of UNC Chapel Hill. He donated the land to start, the white Thomas Mason donated the land to start University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the town of Chapel Hill. And what you see here is the Mason Motel, which, because of the segregation, when people like James Brown and Ella Fitzgerald came to town, they had to have somewhere to stay. So I have seen this hotel listed in the Green Book, but I can't remember which edition it was. But it was a motel, it was also a supper club, and it was a grocery store. Now, unlike our cousins in Durham, who were very blessed when it came to some financial benefits from during this time, most of the business owners in Chapel Hill had to deal with deep poverty, the deep poverty that is beset in Chapel Hill. And my aunt used to say that a lot of people, my Uncle Charlie, who owned this hotel, passed away with a lot of people owing him money. But it was that proximity to power that allowed Uncle Charlie to get a loan to start this hotel. And I think when we're talking about history, we have to acknowledge those two. Now, Granddaddy gave birth to my father, Dave Mason, and I have to brag on Lincoln High for a moment, because Lincoln High, we talk about the class of 61, Lincoln High, in my opinion, really, even though it was a segregated high school, had so many academic gifts. They had movement gifts. The class of 1961 was so bad that nobody even scored on them the whole season. The regular season, nobody even scored. I don't mean that, they won. Nobody even scored on them. And these guys would go and play football. And then after football, they take their equipment off and they go to the protest line. In fact, there were people at Lincoln High School who helped to design the format for protests at North Carolina A&T, because a number of them went to A&T. So at Lincoln High School, and this obviously is not a high school picture, but this is a photo of my father when he was young. He was one of 4 brothers who grew up with those stories of my grandfather from World War II, talking about how Black people's lives, their accomplishments and their beings had not been honored during the time of their service. So I often think about the impact of these historical narratives on young people. And I know I was very much influenced by my father and my uncle, who I was very close to, who always talked about his history and historical context. So I imagine my grandfather probably had a lot to say about my father too. So this is my father in February 1960, as you can see. This is when he and 8 other Black students followed the path of the students at North Carolina A&T, and on February 28th started the first sit-in in Chapel Hill. And I have not been able to find any information against this being the first sit-in in America that was planned, executed, and carried out only by high school students. So if you look at my father's background, you'll see that he is on Graham Street, and in the background is Uncle Charlie's motel. This is, of course, is my mom. Daddy was not drafted because, he was about to get married, and she saved his life during the time that he was about to go to war. So I always put my mom in there. She advocated very much. She and my father advocated very much. Chapel Hill has the second largest achievement and opportunity gap in the nation. So my family had to be advocates for education in Chapel Hill. So my parents gave birth to 3 children who were also educational activists. And I must say, Dr. Parker worked with my favorite uncle, Douglas. Uncle Doug took this picture of us when we were young because he used to keep us when we were young. And, you know, I think I loved him more than my daddy. Because
he actually taught me.
Yeah,
he was absolutely great.
Well, the Mason family has so much love and admiration for Dr. Parker. This is my husband, Corey. When we were in college, we decided that we both wanted to continue in our movement tradition for education. He is now a principal in Durham, and I'm an education activist. So we said one had to be in the system to bring home the check, one had to be in the community. And so that's what we decided to do. This is Miss Esther Tate, who took over Uncle Charlie's motel. She purchased it from him, and it became a center for a drug rehab center. And Ms. Tate offered me an opportunity to open up an after-school program for the children in Chapel Hill to address this achievement gap. So this is probably about 1996 when we had an after-school program for people in the community and advocated for education. These are my children, Akeen and Akanke. And they went to Early College High School at North Carolina Central. And they too are education activists. This is my daughter, Akanke. Let's see if I can go. This is a quick video. So when we were when our children were in high school, there's Akanke. The first person that came off the bus was my son, Akeen. So our family has always talked about the understanding that until Black people are free and taken care of, we have work to do. And so as soon as my children went to A&T, they were what's called Chatham White Scholars. Chatham White Scholars, named after the Black legislators, were akin to the Moorhead Scholars. And that's a very interesting story in and of itself. The story of how Chatham White scholarships, which are full ride academic scholarships, came into being. I would argue that was also, it's a very interesting history. It's my understanding that the Chatham White Scholarship really came because some people on the right wanted to take away things from HBCUs, and this was kind of like an accommodation. And so there was a lot of pushback, and so we were able to keep the scholarships, and my children benefited. So the first thing that my daughter did when she got to A&T was to continue our family's tradition of advocating for education. So the first thing that she did when she went to A&T was gather all the rest of the Chatham White Scholars, brought them back to Chapel Hill, and what you saw them was her chartering a bus to come and help folks with ACT and SAT college preparation. So Akanke is certainly the third generation of activists, women activists in her family for education. And Akanke now, she graduated in 2023 from A&T and got a degree in chemical engineering. And she secured this job, and then she came to me and my husband and she said, I know I told y'all I had this good job, but there's still work to be done in terms of education. So she turned in her little job, and then she decided to go into teaching. And so now she teaches over at Riverside High School. And I wanted to share, this is from, if you look at the date, this is from, I think the date is wrong. This date is so wrong. But anyway, it was last weekend. So it's already happened. So the person that you see in standing up is my husband. And he is talking with a bunch of students We do educational scholarships, and we do educational support in terms of like scholarship applications, college applications, and we continue that tradition. And so here she is at her Riverside High School, and this was her earlier this year. I don't think I'm gonna get into Kemp Plummer battle, but I would like to say that all of this historical information is necessary, and this historical understanding is necessary because Black history is often talked about not necessarily adjacent to white history, but a lot of times, if we're lucky, it's taught as being adjacent to white history, but it's very much othered and erased. And we tend to even view ourselves in the context of what was going on with white folks. So it's very, very important to me and my family that we talk about the conditions that created the need to study history, the need to exist in these spaces in the way that we do, because history is often taught. And just like the people who started the university, there are a lot of resources that go into perpetuating the centering of white folks in power and talk about glamorizing their history while erasing ours. So part of the study of history is very exciting to me because it's like discovering a whole new historical path. But I want to focus on Kemp Plummer battle because he epitomizes a lot of the reason that I study history. Kemp Plummer battle was a president of UNC. He was a genius. He graduated when he was about 15 years old. He was privileged. He signed the succession papers of UNC during the Civil War, but he also was a trained attorney and decided to go to UNC's history department and meddle in history. So he had a lot to do with the graduate program at UNC. He was an enslaver and avowed white supremacist. Like I said, he was born into wealth. He was the valedictorian of his class. He was a leader of in North Carolina. He was an attorney, a litigator. Like I said, he was in the forefront of the separation movement from the states. And he established the UNC graduate history program. So he was UNC president, as you see, from 1876 to 1891. So I was given an opportunity a few years back to be a lecturer for the Kemp Plummer Battle lecture series. So I did what I normally do and try to investigate very, very respectfully for the opportunity to talk with someone. I feel like you should know something about what's going on. And so it was then that I stumbled on Kemp Plummer battle because it was the Kemp Plummer battle lecture. So let me find out something about him. And the more that I read and found out at Wilson Library, the larger my eyes got, the room literally went dark, and it just crystallized the difference in terms of the way that we experience history from local generational Black folk to what has been historically told. Now, I was very close to a man named Fred Battle. Fred Battle's people lived near the university. They used to call this place Windy Hill because there's a big hill that you could go down and slide your sleigh down. Fred Battle was class of 61. They used to call him Toro. And remember, I told you how bad those Tigers were, those Lincoln Tigers were. Fred Battle was, he was a forefront. He was legendary on the football field. After he graduated from Lincoln, he went to A&T, and Fred Battle was the one that constructed this level of protection. What happened was he took one of the old football plays and put that to the marches when the people would go in A&T, so that the guys would flank the women on the inside, and that is how he constructed that march. Now, Fred Battle was born into poverty. He attended segregated schools. He was a football legend, leader at A&T. And when he finished, he developed youth programs. He was the president of the NAACP. He was a freedom fighter. He was a huge education advocate. So we have these parallel histories that exist that need to be explored. So we have Kemp Plummer Battle and we have Fred Battle. Kemp Plummer Battle talks in his memories of his brother who liked to quote unquote tell on himself about the Black women that he would sleep with and produce these children. Now, if you look at Fred Battle's eyes, they are light, they're hazel. So the Battle family in Chapel Hill is known for having no light colored eyes. So they have been tied genealogically to the white Battle family. So I always say that, you know, we carry the name, but not the privileges of the people who are connected to this university. So this is my family on my mother's side, and this is the Burnett family reunion, the Burnett family reunion. And we added the E in the 70s. It used to be B. If you go down to Chatham right now, and you do some genealogical research, you have to take off that E in order to be able to find people. So I'll stop sharing now. And just say again how Felton Foushee asked, and we always have such great conversations. And he said, you know, I want you to talk a little bit about your family and how it impacted. And he also shared, although I was not able to join you, the presentation by Dr. Juliana Perrone. And it really inspired me, that conversation in Dr. Juliana. So I won't go back through the slides, but I ask you to think about some of the people from my family that I introduced you to. Remember Sally Mason, who had the tombstone. I did an adjustment. I went to the U.S. Department of Labor, and then I went to, I forgot the name of the government thing right now, but I went to the U.S. Department of Labor to think about what her vocation was during that time. So Sally Mason, let's just say she was in childcare. She was a cook, she was in childcare, she had a lot of different things, but let's just take the standard measurement for what she would have been paid during, let's say 25 years. We do know that she worked more and longer, but the U.S. Department of Labor says that that particular salary rate should be about $20 an hour for childcare. So if you adjust it for the dollar value, each $1 was worth $24.79 for today's standards. So her yearly salary would have been $47,596.80. Over 25 years, it would have been $1,189,920. This is just for one person, for one job, and one vocation. So then I looked at Ben Mason, who I also introduced you to. He was a farmer. They would make $23.85, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. So his stuff would have been adjusted to just a little bit less than that, about $864,262. Then we had his son, who was a stonemason. Stonemasons get about $23.95. So to adjust it, excuse me, for their lifetime, I think I got Ben's wrong, but they were both over $1 million. And yearly salaries would have been $30,000 and $45,000. Now, I have not gone through the rest of these folks. These are just people who were enslaved. I look at my grandfather, David Mason, who, like so many other people, was not able to benefit from what happened to the Black soldiers after they came out of World War II and were, in fact, duped out of a lot of money and cheated out of a lot of money with the university. I have studied university archives. The primary labor for Black people in my area during that time were janitors. They were paid 25 cents an hour. The people over them were paid 45 cents an hour. And this is after they received federal assistance and monies. They were locked out of housing. They were locked out of wages. And I think it's really important to talk about that. I think it's important to talk about Miss Vivian Foushee, who was very active in 1955. Remember, I told you she initially applied to UNC, but was denied that level of income from having graduated. And Miss Vivian was very persistent. There were a lot of people who just did not have that opportunity. So if we look at reparations or the reparative movement, which I certainly believe in, I think we have to contextualize this history. And I think it's very important to look at the ways in which Black people were showing up during this time and this scope of history, because we still are, there still is disparate housing. There still is disparate education. There still is disparate healthcare. So for me, history and studying history, and I just went through my family history, but I do a lot of public history and public memory work. But at the crux of it is policy change. Because for me, we live in such an academic area. We have North Carolina Central, we have Duke, we have Carolina, we have St. Aug, we have Shaw. We have all of these great research institutions at our disposal. And yet we continue just to study these things. So for me, it's very important to pair policy advocation to historical understanding. And I think that is what will move us forward. So I think I'm gonna stop there. I just wanted to share some of my my people with you and introduce you to some of my people and share with you a little bit about what motivates me, as I hope motivates you to study this history. And I would love to have some discussion with you, and maybe you could tell me about your people or why you study history, but I would love to have that conversation. So I'm gonna end it as I began, Brother Felton, with just huge gratitude to you.
That's reciprocated 10,000-fold. I'm grateful to have you and glad again for you to make the time. I have to say, Ella Baker, as she used to say, who your people. So I'm glad you can tell us who yours are, and it's very refreshing and appreciated by myself that you go through pictures from eras and times that often are thought of as the worst and are not things we don't want to feel or experience or reflect upon, but there's smiling there. There's care there. There's love expressed in those photographs you shared. And that's the side of the coin that I want to elevate when we have these conversations. Our history is in this country. Our history can go outside of this country, but we need to be more respectful, joyous even in what we can recall in this country that has visited some harms, that continues to be something that we wrestle with and don't necessarily do activities around that center that, which is what you're discussing at the academic level. And yeah, studying, we don't need to do another study. All of the evidence points towards the need for repair and attention. And I'm glad that you got to partake in Dr. Perron's presentation a couple weeks ago when you mentioned that, yeah, for her to be here, it must be something good. And yeah, I mean, if you're a human being and you pay this stuff some attention, you land on the right side of that moral arc that Dr. King referenced often. And Ms. Skelton did an awesome job with her presentation. So I'll say before we get to questions, and at least I see your hand, so we'll get things rolling for a couple of minutes of a conversation. If you guys have questions, just raise your hands or just give me a wave so I know to unmic you or tell you to unmic yourself and ask your question. But I just wanted to say everything that we do here is literally about the information. It's about the learning. It is not for someone to feel horrible or bad about something. It's literally just practical things. We only get a short time here. So let's spend that time making our world better. That's the way I look at this thing. And again, I'm grateful. I appreciate your ability to talk about this stuff without an emotional one way or the other swing, just practical. This is real life and this is real history. And it's collective. It's not to be siloed. It's not to be hidden. It's not to be forgotten. It's for us to better understand our shared humanity. So thank you again. Lisa, you had a question you want to ask?
Yeah, thank you. And I do appreciate, number one, you giving that time to my question earlier, because I have a level of sensitivities that I like addressed so I can know for myself how to articulate in a respectful manner how a set of people choose to be addressed. So in that vein, has there been studies, or have you taken interest in the studies of that disconnection from the names? So I'll give the example of mine. It makes it very challenging for me to put certain pieces together because there has been several different ways to spell Macmillan. So that's one of the ways I'm kind of sensitive when our family histories have been disjointed, disconnected, and to try to connect those pieces when you have McMillan or LLIAN or EN or ON. So have you seen that be as great of an issue as maybe I on an individual level trying to go through certain things to get that lineage chronicled?
Yes, thank you for that, Lisa. Yes, for sure I have. And it's very frustrating. I think we should keep in mind that after the Civil War, I think maybe about 12% of even people in North Carolina were literate. So we had a real literacy problem, and certainly a problem with people understanding how to spell and pronounce names. So if you add white supremacy to that, they certainly were not even interested in trying to get our names right. So there's a level of frustration that I have come into a lot of times, oftentimes. And what I have done, Lisa, like if today is, okay, so in 2 weeks, I think it's very important. I always keep connections with elders and young people. So I still work with the women of the movement. We meet once a month. And we talk about history, we talk about historical context. And what I know is that if you pair their understanding of history, there are a lot of voids that they can fill in, right? So in 2 weeks, I'm inviting Adrian Fikes, who actually happens to be a Chapel Hill descendant and one of the preeminent genealogists in the country. Now, I have a little trepidation with genealogy sometimes, because what I found is oftentimes people want to highlight their ancestor to see how, they were connected to this famous, person, and it can devolve into classism really quickly. And it doesn't make any sense really either, right? Because if we're generationally from here, you're going to be connected to an old, wealthy, probably well-known white person anyway. But I have learned to really appreciate genealogy and its role in helping us to discover who we are. And also that piece that you're talking about, that missing piece about maybe misspellings and stuff, I'm often guided by my elders who said, well, you know what? We used to have our name with an E, but we don't have our name with an E anymore. And so they provide that context. So I'm having Adrian Fikes come, and she's going to walk us through a genealogy program for the elders. And so they can help connect us with their people. And I found that's really helpful. And then the week after that, we are taking them on a trip to South Carolina so that they could go to the museum, the South Carolina Museum, because we know that South Carolina Port is where a lot of Black people descend from, and they have a dedicated space to that genealogy. So I wish I could speak with more authority on like how to do that, Lisa, but what I can tell you is that there are little tricks and techniques that one can use to identify the people if you put the first name on it. I would also say this, Adrian says something that I really fully agree with. We shouldn't even have to pay for stuff like Ancestry.com and all these genealogical things. Why would we have to pay? Why should somebody have to be able to profit off of the labor and way that Black people were enslaved? That should be a free service that we should be able to find, that the government can connect us to the people, our history. So anyway, I absolutely agree with what you said. It is very difficult. But if I find any tips, I'll give them to Brother Felton, and maybe he can share them with you. I'm happy to do that.
I'll be glad to. And Karen, I'm coming to you because I know you have some real insight to provide for people who are interested. Karen actually helped me locate some documents that showed my great grandfather's service record in World War I. And she did it and does it very well. So see someone that you could actually lean on to disrupt some of that pay and this other stuff. She provided a wonderful website. I think during Dr. Peron's presentation, or maybe it was yours. It was one that you could easily just go find some documented evidence of ancestors. And I actually went back to my great grandfathers being a blacksmith, sharecropping. It was pretty fascinating. And that's one of the grounding arguments for me for reparations, for an understanding of the specificity of the Black American existence. If I can trace my lineage back to sharecropping and blacksmithing, that's meaningful. That's something that connects myself and others to this country in a most intricate way. And we don't leave immediately. We're here for a long time. You go back in our lineage, we are here in big ways. Go ahead, Danita.
Yeah, and forgive me, Karen. I definitely want to hear what you have to say, but it's very much connected to what you said. I'm doing some research now on next year is the 25th anniversary of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's exhibit on the university, slavery in the university was the name of the thing. And it was groundbreaking. It was like the first time that, there was like really big discussion about slavery's role in the developing of the university. So I'm working with people who are working on that exhibit. And my advocation is that we extend that into to the Black labor force that continued over the years. So I'm looking through this stuff the other day. I'm looking through the laundry room. I'm looking through the, like you said, the blacksmith. I'm looking through the coal plant, power plant, all of that stuff. And I come across this article of a Black janitor, and that's foundational to the work that I'm doing because they kept these ledgers. This piece was in 1943, and they were interviewing a Black janitor who talked about his role at the university. And he was saying that his mother died when he was 6 years old, and his father worked for the railroad. So a white man decided to take him in under the condition that his father had to give up all rights to this young man. So he was talking about the very small amount of education that he received, but he was also talking about that his chore was he had to work in the cotton field. So he did not leave this house until he was, thank you, Dr. Park, it's good to see you. He did not leave this house until he was 26 years old. So you know what that means? That man bought him a slave. He bought that little boy when he was 6 years old and made him work in that cotton field. And that's why he quit school. This is what he said in the article, so that he could go back to the cotton field. So that whole notion of enslavement ending in 1865, that did not happen. This man was talking about 1943. If you deduct 20 years from, let's say it was 20 years, he was 23 years old. It was 1923, and people were actively capturing young people and keeping them as enslaved people. And I know y'all heard that story a couple of months ago where white folks had captured these 3 Black children and had them working under these awful conditions, and they were laborers. So anyway, when we talk about the calculus of reparations, we got to go, at least until the end of Jim Crow. And I contend we got to look at what happened in the 80s too. So there's a lot of things that go into that calculus. So I absolutely agree with you, Brother Felton.
Yeah, the ripple in the pond is great. And I just wanted to add real quick, Karen, and I'm coming right to you. For one, there was a story, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago in South Carolina, where a Black man was pretty much being treated as a slave. And he was had some mental issues, but they caught a guy that had a restaurant and just basically had this guy working for free. But other thing about the names, Lisa, a lot of times when people were freed, sometimes they kept the enslaver's name because there was some type of value in it societally. There may have been an altering in the spelling that takes place there and pronunciation. And from what I can learn and understand about Foushee is that it is actually Scottish or Irish or something. You know, people automatically go to Frenchman. It's probably the way I say it, but it is a unique name that has a strange history. But there was a big Scottish presence in North Carolina as well. But Karen, I want to hear from you because she's got some good resources for you if you're interested in finding more out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen.
Lineage. Yeah.
That I hit it there. Yeah, I just wanted to let you and everybody else know that there are people who are aware of the lack of information, the walls, the cost involved. And so some of that has gone away because people have said the same thing and have made in good inroads to say, we should not have to pay for that information that was withheld from us, that our ancestors were unable to read and write and couldn't make their own records, were, just all of those things. So I just want to let everybody know, you do not have to have a subscription to Ancestry in order to access slavery era records or things related to African Americans, such as the Freedmen's Bureau records. I can't tell you all of them off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that you can search and look at those records without having a paid subscription. Secondly, you can also find those and more records for free at familysearch.org. You can just make a free account. You have the most access of everywhere. Now, that started by the LDS community, the Mormons, very big into genealogy around the world. There's an uncomfortable history there with race, but they too are reckoning with that and are also prioritizing getting these records indexed and available. And then the third is I work primarily in Virginia and then to a smaller extent, North Carolina research. And I know that both states have put money in the state budget for the archives to prioritize digitizing and getting access to Black American historical records. And it is amazing. So like I will email once a year with the archivist in Virginia in Richmond and say, hey, I'm still waiting for Albemarle County records. When do you think they're gonna be available? Or, at any chance Caroline County will be done in the next year, right? So they are actively working on this at state level. Always check your state archives, and those records are free for everyone to use.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Karen.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Adrienne Fikes uses Family Search. She's a big advocate of Family Search, and I have a lot of great relationship with the Mormon community, and they are doing a lot of work to kind of reckon with this history. So, thank you so much for mentioning that, Karen.
Yeah, I was just going to add really quickly that UNCG has a wonderful website for you that is available to search family histories in regards to people who are enslaved. It is really rich, and it's based on a lot of Dr. Parker's work. I'll say it because I'm so happy that he did it. He gifted me a copy of his original work, Chasing Freedom, that I'm super excited to engage in and to know that it's being utilized and recognized in some really meaningful ways. I wanted to address a comment in the chat, and then Deanna, if you have a question, I'll come right to you. But Latasha says Fannie Lou Hamer grew up on a plantation and was picking cotton at the age of 6. Therefore, I don't doubt such stories. Yeah. In terms of the free labor or the exploitation of Black labor, child labor laws didn't apply at all, especially, until they came into some point of origin in the late 19th century, early 20th century. But nobody was thinking about that in regards to Black youth and their exploitation, even well into the 20th century, which you're mentioning, Fannie Lou Hamer. But something I was just saying to my class yesterday, eerie, but but really grounding experiences going to somewhere like Charleston, especially at Fort Sumter, where they do a really good job of talking about this historical site with regard to the enslaved people who were everywhere in Charleston, who were doing the labor, creating and making the bricks. And on these bricks, you can see the tiny fingerprints of children. So children at 4, 5, 6, as soon as they could walk and talk, were tasked with turning these bricks so they could dry properly, but their fingerprints get to us. So yeah, this is a history that I mean, it's deep, but it's not, to me, meant to be a turnoff or something that's so atrocious and hard to endure. It is a piece of our journey, and it should not be thought about as something to not think about. That's my position. Deanna, you have a comment you want to make, Ms. Hogans? Or maybe she just was taking herself off mute. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to say or share before we wrap up? If not, I am again always grateful to have you guys here. Hunter, you have something you want to say?
It's just, I just got an article yesterday from a cop friend, and but I'll drop it in the chat. And it's making me think of when you're talking about dropping letters and how language or transliteration, things, modern English or Western scholarship doesn't or do the service that like oral historians like yourself, the work you're doing with Native or Indigenous or people of color histories, that's as valuable, if not more valuable, to the scholarly work. So his work was on the word Pocosin for swamp, but on a literal word for Native Americans rather than a name or following a name back in there. And I just think that's it's just in my head right now. I just want to share that. This is Ryan Emanuel. He's at Duke, just published a book. This is an article that he's done an advance for that book. And but this is his work, not mine. But thank you for making me think of this. And again,
Thank you for that comment. And I also just want to say really quickly that I appreciate so much your approach to this work. This is trauma work. I mean, sometimes I sit in those archives, tears just streaming down my face. These are people who think about the worst thing you can think about happening to your grandmother and then having to write about that. It is very difficult. And at the same time, I'm never filled with so much joy as I am when I think about our people's resilience, about our creativity, about the resourcefulness. There's so many lessons that we can learn from our people's history in terms of community. Latasha talked about Fannie Lou Hamer. You should hear the SNCC folks, and I work with civil rights veterans, SNCC vet. You should hear them talk about Miss Hamer. I go down to Mississippi. There's such a beautiful sense of community, even to this day. There's so many lessons from resilience and brilliance that we can learn, that this is also very, very joyful work. So, I always say it's rhythm and blues. You can't have one without the other, so I just really appreciate that. I love the way you contextualize that, Brother Felton.
No, I love that comment. It is rhythm and blues, and that's good and that's bad, but there's so much about, like you say, the perseverance, the survival. And right now in my work on my dissertation, I'm really diving into Frederick Douglass a little bit more, and it's just this rich understanding that you can have humor, you can have these profound observations of a society that you are challenging, that you are questioning, that you have endured slavery, become free in, and to read some of his words and bring them to present thought are like, man, this stuff is worthy of our attention. It really is. And just real quick, there was this thing I was looking at while I was at Yale doing some research, and this letter that he responded to a gentleman that was from Maryland, where he was a slave, and the guy was saying that his autobiography just couldn't have been right. He knew some of those people, and those were decent people, and they weren't like Douglass described. And Douglass writes this letter responding to him, saying, "Oh, because the guy was like, when I met Douglass, he was really just very demure. He didn't have all of this blusteriness, and I can't believe that he's writing this stuff now." And one of Douglas's responses was, yeah, I probably was like you described me as being, I was a slave. You know, I was not in the
That's right.
best of spirits. I was not
Yes.
someone that felt like empowered enough to say or do the things that I'm doing now. So yeah, you might be right about that description. But it was just to know that those things exist, to know that what we experience and feel now in terms of how we view our position in society has been expressed thoroughly, even when it was worse conditions and
That's
worse
right.
shape.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so it's there. And I'm going to give you the last word, Ms. Hogan. So please leave us with something else. I'm sorry I stepped on the last comment that I thought was perfect, the rhythm and blues. So if you got one more, give it to us.
Well, no, anytime. I just want to thank you again for having me, Brother Felton, and just tell you how much I enjoyed this new community of folks. I appreciate all of your interest. You know, when I was I was a young activist at A&T, it's about 30 years ago. Woo, Lord, don't talk to me about white people. I couldn't stay, And I went home and I told my grandmother, I was complaining about white people. And she said, don't say nothing bad about white people. They're some of the best people in the world. I said, grandmother, if there is a good white person, I want you to introduce me to him because I ain't never met no good white person. Anyway, I'm so glad that I lived to be 57 because what I understand and what my collection of history has helped me understand is that sometimes there's context that is missing and understanding. And we are here together. We have to learn how to live together. And part of the beauty of the time that we're living in now is that we have more information than we've ever had at any point of our history that not only explains why we are in the particular position that we're in, but if we can learn from those history lessons and work together, then we can bring ourselves to another level. And so I thank God that I have gotten to a different place where I can appreciate the past and work with people who are sincerely dedicated to understanding and contextualizing and moving forward. So it does me good. Latasha, I saw your text. I would love to talk with you about Miss Hamer. She's one of the people that I love to talk about. And again, I just want to thank you for this platform because we're taking history out of the university. That's sometimes taking the power out of somebody else to define our story and our way forward. So thank you for all the ways that you are celebrating and uplifting public history. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. Look, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for sharing your lunch with us, Ms. Mason-Hogans. I'm just grateful, and I look forward to catching up with you. We got to talk about John Brown. So my time in West Virginia is worthy of just that disruption of, you know, everybody's a disappointment. That man is just worthy of so much. He needs to be the statue replacer for some of this Confederate mess. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
Y'all have
Be
a good
good.
day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Another great one.
I'm thankful, man. Hey, Ricky, we'll catch up soon, man. I got to catch up with the Leadership Council on a couple things as well. So we'll talk